Energy and the Environment, Josh Frydenberg. Josh Frydenberg, thanks for your time. So there is more gas available now in the East Coast market and prices have come down, but they haven't come down enough. Rod Sims, in fact, says we're still in a pretty bad position. Is the government prepared to do more?
Well, we are doing more, David. As you know, we inherited a terrible mess left by the Labor Party when it comes to energy policy. And indeed, when Bill Shorten was a senior minister and Rudd and Gillard were in power, energy prices went up by more than 100%. One of the big drivers of the increase has been gas prices. And in 2012, the Labor Party were warned in their own energy white paper and by the Australian Energy Market Operator that by increasing exports from the East Coast, you would see higher prices and a tightness in the supply-demand balance. We've been trying to clean up that mess by calling in the LNG suppliers, getting them to guarantee that there won't be any shortfalls in the domestic market, and that tough talk from the Prime Minister and the subsequent agreement has led to more supply coming into the market, more competition, and an up to 50% fall in the price of gas for the large users. Prices are still too high, but will continue to take strong action.
Yep, and that's what I want to get to, because clearly, you know, this is welcome for many, but for some commercial gas users, including the Gibson Island fertiliser plant, they are still facing closure because of the price of gas, and some smaller users have told the ACCC in this report they continue to have no gas available. So what's the next step on this front?
Well, what the report shows is that the LNG suppliers have put more than 40 petajoules into the domestic market that would have otherwise gone for export. Now, when you consider that 1 petajoule is enough to keep a town like Warrnambool or Wollongong going for a whole year, that's a lot of gas. So this will lead, and has led already, to reduced pressure on prices, but we need to continue to get it back down to the net back price, which the ACCC identify as that core range of where prices should be. The long-term...
So how do you do that? Are you prepared to actually pull the export trigger?
Well, we don't need to pull the export trigger because we've reached this agreement with the companies and they are now acting, and that is what the ACCC is reporting back to the government.
But it's not enough, as you acknowledge. So what's next?
The next thing is to get the state and territory governments to lift their mindless moratoriums and bans on onshore conventional and unconventional gas. You see, in Victoria, they've got a declining gas resource coming from their offshore developments. But they are sitting on 40 years worth of gas supply onshore, but Daniel Andrews has restricted those developments even when it doesn't involve fracking. In New South Wales, they import more than 95% of their gas, but have yet to give the green light to the Narrabri development, which obviously would be a substantial boon for the gas users in New South Wales. And in the Northern Territory, we're starting to see some positive signs with the release.
Well, I want to ask you about that. We saw the independent report yesterday to the Territory government. It did recommend lifting the moratorium on fracking for shale gas. Do you welcome that, and
Yes.
will it make a difference in the short term?
We certainly do welcome that, and we've been calling on the Northern Territory Labor government to lift their restrictions, because it's said that there are up to 200 years worth of gas supplies in the Northern Territory, in the Beetaloo Basin and in surrounding areas. Now, that gas could be used to support businesses and households on the East Coast, because as you know, we have an East Coast problem, not a West Coast problem when it comes to gas. But the long-term solution, David, is to encourage landowners and farmers to develop their resource, to give them more of a share of a pie and the rewards that come with these gas developments, a bit like we've seen in the United States, which has $3 to $4 a gigajoule gas, when Australia recently has been seeing $16 and $17 a gigajoule gas.
All right, so I mean, you clearly still want the states and the territories to do more about lifting those bans and moratoriums, helping farmers, giving them an incentive. It would sound like there to make their land available for more gas exploration. But as far as the federal government's concerned, just correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing from you is you've gone as far as you're going to go in terms of heavying the LNG exporters to put more gas into the market.
Well, we've reached agreement with them that there won't be any shortfalls in the 2018 and 2019 years. Now, that's very significant because, as you know, with coal-fired power stations closing, we're seeing greater use of gas as a transition fuel for electricity and power generation, as well as being a traditional feedstock for.
Well, there still could be a shortfall next year. The ACCC says if there's high demand, there'll be a 33 petajoule shortfall.
Well, the companies have given us a guarantee that they won't allow a shortfall, and they will no longer be selling first into the international spot market, but actually selling it into the domestic market first. We're also seeing a lot more transparency with the LNG companies required to provide more data and information about their transactions to the ACCC. All of this will breed more competition. It will get more suppliers into the market. It will get better terms for the customers, and ultimately it will get lower prices, as we're already starting to see.
Ultimately, and this will take a while to flow through to households, clearly. A lot of households heading into summer are clearly still suffering from high power prices, be it gas or electricity. What do you say to households at this time of year? You've done a number of things this year, but you're still trying to get this national energy guarantee up and running with approval from the states. That'll be the job next year for you. When will we see power prices start to come down?
Well, as you know, the closure of the Hazelwood power station in Victoria and the closure of the Northern power station in South Australia led to higher prices and to a tightness in supply. We've also seen more renewable investments come on, and will continue to do so over the coming years. Getting power prices down is a complex equation, but we are doing everything possible to do that. We have passed legislation to rein in the poles and the wire companies to stop them gaming the system and appealing the decisions of the Australian Energy Regulator. If the Labor Party had done that, David, then consumers would have been $6.5 billion better off. We're seeing thousands of Australian households get a better deal from their retailers as a result of, again, the agreement that the Prime Minister struck with them to ensure that customers knew when they were coming off their discounted arrangements and going on to higher standing offers. And we've seen more than 500,000 households use the Australian Energy Regulator site, Energy Made Easy, to compare offers. We're investing in storage, and that will make a difference in reducing the volatility in the system, and of course the gas out.
So when will we see an impact from all of this, Minister? When will the price start to fall for households?
Well, the ACCC has already said today that you are seeing reductions in gas prices for energy users, particularly large businesses, but also smaller businesses. Now, this also is good news for households because it will flow through to lower household prices for gas, and that's good news. But to get electricity prices down to the levels that we want them to be, David, we need to get the National Energy Guarantee in, and that will see households $400 better off. Now, all the big industry groups, the Business Council of Australia, the Australian Industry Group, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the BlueScopes, the BHPs, the Dow Chemicals, they've all got behind the national farmers, they've got behind the National Energy Guarantee. It's only the Labor Party that are dragging their heels simply because they didn't come up with this idea. We've even got Labor states who have supported more work being done through the COAG Energy Council. So we are making significant headway.
Yeah, they certainly want to see more detail around this. Look, just getting back to your earlier point, prices really took off when Hazelwood closed down. Before that, the Northern power station in South Australia as well.
And gas.
And gas. But the closure of coal-fired power, Liddell in the Hunter Valley, AGL pretty adamant they're going to shut it down. Do you concede that's now going to happen?
Well, we concede that that is what they are intending to do, and they've foreshadowed for some time that it will close in 2022. They have put forward an alternative plan, as you know, involving more coal out of Bayswater, gas, peaking plants, as well as battery storage and wind and solar. I've asked the Australian Energy Market Operator to run the ruler over that plan to ensure that there is no shortfall in the dispatchability requirements in the system. But we need to put on record that it was AGL themselves, David, who first raised with the Prime Minister the idea of selling Liddell to another party. Now, we asked them to consider keeping that coal-fired power station going. They've taken a decision at board level not to do that. They're obviously not willing to sell it to another party, even though they raised that with the Prime Minister, and they've taken this other alternative to put forward a new proposal for generation, and we'll make sure that that gets a proper look at.
And look, their plans might see, just as much dispatchable power made available, but at what price? What's your view on this? Are prices going to go up if the coal-fired power station at Liddell closes?
Well, we would obviously want power prices to come down, and the company has said that the cost of putting an additional improvements to Liddell to keep it going beyond 2022 would be greater than the costs of investing in this new generation. But these are the questions that the Australian Energy Market Operator will run the ruler over. They'll report back to the government in mid-February. We'll have more to say about that then.
Okay, so we're waiting for that. We're waiting for the further modelling on the National Energy Guarantee. One of the other things we're still waiting on is the
David, to be fair,
study.
To be fair, we've got the modelling on the National Energy Guarantee. The Labor Party doesn't want to talk about it because there are significant savings, at 23% reduction in wholesale.
You are, well, there's further work being done. Is the technical. Yeah, on the design of it, to see how all that looks. We're also waiting for the Snowy Hydro 2.0 feasibility study.
Yes.
We've seen the Prime Minister there throughout the year talking up the plans. The feasibility study was meant to be released this month. Is it still going to be?
Look, it's on track, and there's been a lot of work that has been undertaken by Snowy Hydro themselves, and obviously the Australian Renewable Energy Agency has been involved. But these are exciting times for pumped.
Are we going to see that feasibility study, though? Is that coming this month?
Well, it's imminent, and there is some obviously final work to be. Snowy Hydro is that the feasibility study has been proceeding as planned, and as you know, as a federal government level, we're very committed to this project. It will be an additional 2,000 megawatts of storage and power into the system. It will be the biggest renewable pumped hydro project in the Southern Hemisphere. It underscores what...
So it will go ahead?
Doing. Oh, we're absolutely confident it will go ahead, and we stand behind it as being a game-changing, nation-building project that will provide the big battery for the east coast of Australia that we need.
But I mean, what's important in the feasibility study is the price tag, surely. Some of the estimates are $2 to $3 billion. I'm just wondering, does that also include, you'd need a lot more transmission, wouldn't you, to get the power to where it's needed? You'd need to really upgrade transmission network. There
are upgrades to transmission networks that need to be undertaken. That is the subject of...
What do they cost?
Well, the exact costs have yet to be defined, but certainly it does involve significant investment, as any new major...
Could be several $1 billion, couldn't it, on top of the actual construction?
Well, you're not the expert. Let's leave it to the experts to work out...
What do you reckon?
Exactly. Well, I know that transmission costs for a new solar farm, a new wind farm, a pumped hydro facility are obviously major costs, but at the same time, you need to invest in that transmission networks, David, in order to make these renewable projects a reality.
But are we talking, I mean, just to be clear, 2,000 extra megawatts of power coming out of Snowy Hydro?
Correct.
What's the upgrade in transmission going to cost? Several $1 billion? Is that roughly the ballpark?
Look, there's a lot of work being done on the transmission equation. There's obviously more work to be done, but as you know, transmission does need to be upgraded, whether it's at Snowy 2.0.
But you've got to work that out before you commit taxpayers' money to it, right?
Well, transmission costs are a fraction of what the new generation costs are required, but they're still significant. And of course, we will be working on the transmission equation just as we are on the feasibility study and the generation equation too.
Final one, Josh Frydenberg, away from your portfolio, the Bennelong by-election on Saturday. We've heard the Prime Minister today talking up just how important this is. How important is it, do you think, for Malcolm Turnbull and his leadership?
Well, it's important for the government, it's important for the stability of the party and the parliament, and it's important for the stability of the country, because John Alexander has been a really effective, well-liked local member. I had a good opportunity to campaign with him just the other week. He's well known, he's delivered. The Prime Minister has announced substantial new investments in infrastructure projects and in a range of other commitments in the area, and I'm confident that John Alexander will receive the support from his local community. Certainly nothing is being taken for granted.
If he doesn't, though, my question is, if he doesn't, can Malcolm Turnbull survive as Prime Minister?
Look, Malcolm Turnbull's doing an outstanding job. He's delivered on a number of fronts this year. We've just seen economic growth continue. We've seen 1,000 new jobs be created every day.
And so he'll survive regardless of the outcome?
Absolutely. He will continue to lead the government and the party, and John Alexander deserves to be supported on Saturday's by-election, because he's done an outstanding job for his local community.
All right, Josh Frydenberg, Minister for Energy and the Environment, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Good to be with you, David.